Give me a minute and we'll talk about what kind of a week Russia had. So it all started early in the week with this explosion at a tank factory out in the Chelyabinsk region, far from Ukraine. Um, and it's the only plant that makes diesel engines for armored vehicles. That's going to be a problem inside Russia, right? It's the only plant inside Russia that makes diesel engines for armored vehicles. That was the first hit. Followed the very next day by the air plant factory in Smolensk, which is like 800 kilometers from Kyiv, right? So these are deep inside Russia, these hits. The air plant factory doesn't just make planes. What they're really known for is the production of Iskander missiles. So one of the plants that makes the Iskander missile burns in Smolensk. I think that was Thursday, the same day that we got the news that the tunnel, which is the choke point for all the Eastern Rail connections from China and North Korea, they all have to go through this tunnel out in the Baikal-Amur line. And this tunnel was blown up inside a train car with airline fuel, jet fuel, and other fuel tanker cars blew inside the tunnel. So for the near to short term, this tunnel is out of action and no supplies are coming from China or North Korea via this route. And if I'm not mistaken, that was in the early morning hours of Thursday. And then in the early morning hours of Friday, a train with tankers of fuel, about 50 cars, farther to the east than the tunnel, goes up in smoke. And this thing burns. Ooh, hey, I forgot about the warehouse. This is tough to see, but what this is two drones about to crash into a warehouse full of drones. And the warehouse burns, all the drones are destroyed. It's an incredible hit. There was so much going on this week, so many successful strikes. I didn't even have a chance to talk about this. This is the airfield in Saki, major airfield just north of Sevastopol for the Russian Air Force. Here it is, and here's a satellite image of the airfield. Now, we don't have good intel on what was destroyed, but from that fire, you can be sure that either the fuel depot burned or the ammo depot burned or both. So all in all, Russia's having a bad week, a real bad week. I'm going to end with this photo. This is the second hit on Russian rail lines in the far east of the country. Not only was it 50 tankers of fuel, but it happened on this bridge, which means, right, rail lines are very easy to repair when they're in the ground. But if you have to be worried about the structural stability of the bridge, which you're certainly going to have to be worried about that after tons and tons of fuel burned on top of it, or you have to be worried about the structural stability of a tunnel, which you're certainly going to have to be after tons and tons of fuel burned inside it. The repairs are going to take longer if you have any concerns about your own safety at all, which we know increasingly the Russians seem not to have, given some of the accidents that we see happening involving so-called elite forces and their barbecues. So this is a roundup of all of the bad things that happened this week to Russian forces, and I would encourage you to note they are all hits deep, deep inside Russia. In the case of this rail bridge, 4,000 miles, not kilometers, miles from the border of Ukraine. There is nowhere safe for Russians in Ukraine. There is now clearly no longer safe anywhere for Russians in Russia.